I'm so excited about the new season of Arcane. I want to paint the character Jinx from this Netflix show. Please note this is not a tutorial. I have only painted with water-soluble oil paint once before this portrait, last week in fact. Many oil paint mistakes and sins will be committed. Honestly, it's a how not to, but we'll get to that later. If you didn't watch the show, no worries. I'll talk about it quickly for a second later on, and then we'll get back to this paint and the process and the oil paints. In one of the trailers for the new season, this special frame caught my attention. I immediately had a vision in my mind. I used this frame as a reference, as well as different paintings of women in candlelight and this Rembrandt portrait. If you don't know Arcane or haven't watched it yet, let me try to sell you on this show for a minute. It is a cartoon or animated show based on a well-known computer game, which you don't have to know anything about for watching the show. The story takes place in a city that's left divided by a previous civil unrest, if not outright civil war. We follow both characters from a wealthy top side as well as from the impoverished and dangerous undercity. As a new arcane technology is unearthed, the world evolves just as rapidly as the characters grow and evolve themselves. It's only 9 episodes, and also for my Art Nouveau fans, some scenes you'll want to pause frame by frame because even the Undercity has beautiful details in its design. Anyway, I highly recommend it, and this weekend the second season begins on Netflix that will conclude the story, which is also lovely, a show that knows when to end things. I digress. Let's talk about the oil paint. I'm using Schminke Norma Blue water-soluble oil paints. Schminke Norma is normal oil paint, but Schminke Norma Blue is water-soluble vegan oil paint. I also have a Reeves paper palette with me to mix my paints. Here's a quick summary of what I learned in my research about oil paint before I decided whether to go with water-soluble or normal oil paint. Oil paint per se is not toxic. Only very few pigments have toxic qualities. The thing some people struggle with and negatively associate with oil paint is the fumes of the solvents. Think of turpentine or other paint thinner. Water-based oil paint is changed on a molecular level so that it is water-soluble. You aren't supposed to thin it down with water somehow, but you can clean your brushes and surfaces with water and soap. To thin the paint down, you should use special painting medium. I honestly don't use the medium. I will try what happens when I use water and only use the medium when I think it's appropriate and needed. You know, if it sounds like a scam to sell special art supplies and it looks like a scam to sell special art supplies, it probably is a scam to sell special art supplies. Or is that just me? I thought that was the selling point of water-soluble oil paint, but apparently it's not. Anyways, before this Jinx portrait, I painted a Damiano David portrait I showed you in a YouTube short. And I'll check out if there really are cracks in the painting or any other unwanted things are happening, and will tell you in a follow-up video. Also, I am open to making a water-soluble oil paint video in a find your art medium style. If you have any questions about the medium, feel free to write them to me in a comment, and I'll make sure to answer them in that video. I have 3 brushes for oil paintings, 2 Da Vinci Nova synthetic brushes, 1 filbert in size 12 and 1 round in size 0 for details, and 1 filbert brush Da Vinci College Edition in size 6. I'm very happy with them, and I'll only try a flat one soon as well. I'm also using a painting knife. This one is from Zank, but any painting knife or even a plastic knife will do to mix paint and apply some on the paper. Some thoughts on this particular portrait, aka let's learn from my mistakes. Let's get the first and biggest one out of the way. I know I go in blind into new mediums and projects, but even then I knew I should have used gesso on my paper or just used a prime canvas. I was so excited to get started though, and the Damiano portrait went so well. I was anxious that gesso would ruin my sketch, and I just didn't. I don't know. It was stupid. The first layer was fully absorbed by the paper, and it dried way too quickly. which rids the oil paint of its wanted qualities. Of course, it's nice that the painting was fully dry after a day, but I had even trouble while painting. Jinx's right arm was already fully dry when I tried to blend it, which is why I surrendered at some point and cut my losses. The Damiano portrait was on a Canson oil pad and the Jinx portrait on black Clairefontaine paint on paper. And I definitely learned that one is better than the other and I should definitely use gesso. Maybe you have some other tips. I know this must be super painful for people who enjoy oil painting to watch. Sorry about that. Getting the colors right is also quite difficult to me. I had to add more and more yellow to emulate the light from her lid match, which is why I just went over some spaces several times and tried to correct the color. This led to me using less and less paint because I got quite stingy with it. I had already mixed so many shades I didn't end up using because they weren't yellow enough that I was using less and less paint while mixing. But this makes painting much harder and blending almost impossible, especially in combination with a ungessoed dry paper surface. And in my research, I also learned that beginners use way too little paint, and that was definitely true for this painting. Had I done a, let's say, color mixing exercise beforehand instead of one color wheel, I'd have probably had an easier time mixing them. Even though I struggled with this painting, I still like how it turned out, and I'm excited for the next oil painting, as well as the second season of Arcane. Feel free to geek out in the comments about either Arcane or art supplies. I love both. I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.